You are listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, inventors, creators, and leaders in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, marketer and publicist in the cannabis industry. Universities across the country are working in all areas of research and development to advance cannabis cultivation, medicine, drug delivery, and technology. But these innovations are collecting dust because the universities are not in the business of business and taking products to market. Today we meet Lance Anderson. He's a partner at the law firm Dickinson Wright, and he's uniquely positioned to play matchmaker to research universities, entrepreneurs, and VCs to help them create partnerships and uncover cannabis innovations they could adopt through partnerships. Lance has a technical background in life sciences, including proprietary plants, genetics, and plant-derived products. He's also served as in-house counsel and lead IP attorney for both a large public research university system and an early-stage venture capital company. Let's meet Lance. Good morning, Lance.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good. So thank you. I'm excited to talk to you and learn about what you're doing. But so you're based in Texas then?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Cool. Wow, that's fun. I've always wanted to go to Austin, actually. Just haven't made it down there.
Yeah, I'd wait a couple months. We're apparently in a heat wave, and there's no signs of letting up.
Oh, that's right. I did hear you guys are in a heat wave.
It's brutal
right?
down here.
So anyway, I guess if we could just start with just tell us about your practice, your law firm and your practice at the law firm and how you are working in the cannabis industry. And that's why I thought it was kind of strange that you're living in Texas and
yet active in the cannabis,
industry. Yeah. So just
absolutely.
and then we can dive into all the stuff that you're working on, which I'm excited to hear about.
Okay, super. So so I work with the law firm Dickinson Wright, which is originally based out of Michigan, and it's slowly over the past couple of decades grown into what we would consider to be a national footprint, as well as with Canadian office as well. So we're up to 19 offices. We have about 500 attorneys, and it's a typical fully integrated law firm that handles most practice areas. I happen to be a part of the firm's intellectual property or IP practice, and typically, I deal with IP transactions. I do have my patent bar number, so I've done a lot previously with patent prosecution efforts before the USPTO, and I've assisted with various aspects of IP rights, ranging from patents over to trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. But what I've seen my practice do lately is really focus on transactions of many types. You can do, for IP transactions, most people think of license agreements. That's certainly a core focus for me, but also there are many types of contracts I call working agreements, contracts in the day-to-day operation of your business that involve IP. For example, if you want to hire a consultant, you need to make sure you own what that consultant develops. Most people in the copyright world refer to that as work for hire. But similar language needs to apply for any type of intellectual contribution. There's also the buying and selling of companies and assets. Those obviously have a lot of intellectual property ramifications, including representations and warranties that the buyer is getting what they're, being told they're buying. So there's a lot that goes into some of that. So I'll support the firm's corporate transactions groups as kind of the IP specialist. And then with my own clients, I'll serve as a kind of outside general counsel for any issues. And a lot of my clients happen to be innovation driven in some way, shape, or form. And that continues to be more and more important as we continually look to intangible value associated with companies. And then you have this kind of unique background that I kind of came up through, not on purpose. This was all by accident. Pretty much everything with me leading up to this point has been somewhat accidental or serendipitous. But I grew up out in West Texas in commercial agriculture. It was back when West Texas had water resources, aquifer resources widely available. And so we grew high input corn, cotton, soybeans, wheat, you name it. My father was a PhD entomologist, and we would be hired by growers to go and check their fields and their crops, ranging from, pest control to weed control, fertility, moisture, crop rotation, and strategy, et cetera. So I grew up doing that. And so when I went to school, my focus was on entomology as an undergraduate through the school's agricultural college. And then and then all of a sudden get a call from my father who's saying, "Don't come home. We're running out of water. The way farming occurs here is about to change. Go do something else." And so as a senior in college, I elected law school just as something else to do, having no clue and really no exposure to that profession. So then I go to law school, and that was a shock to the system. But at that same time, I go back to the ag school, and my major professor says, "Why don't you do a joint degree plan?" Because at that time, this was in the late 90s, you're seeing the agricultural biotechnology revolution with all of the GMOs and the transgenic varieties coming out. And guess what? All of that was patented. And it was the patents behind those technologies that allowed companies like Monsanto to control literally 80% of the global market in soybeans, 80+% of the global market in cotton, because they were able to patent early some of the key technologies that were used in bringing in a gene to give weed resistance, et cetera. So,
interesting.
It was quite interesting. So I did a master's thesis on that. So here comes the intellectual property interest and the focus. So that it was from an agriculture perspective, it was from a biotechnology perspective that I began to understand the importance of intellectual property rights in a business. At that same time, the university was starting its technology commercialization office, which was an outlet of the research department of the institution. And so this gets into some of what we're talking about today. Universities are interested in commercially benefiting from some of their developments. And this little office they had started back in 1999 was focused solely on doing that to complement the traditional university roles, which would be research and education, right?
Yeah.
So I went and started clerking there, and ultimately, when I graduated law school, that being really the only, this was Texas Tech University, located in Lubbock, Texas. There's not a lot of, what I would consider to be intellectual property, jobs or positions available in that community, or at least there weren't at that time. So I ended up working for the university in that technology commercialization office, and ended up running that office as a, young attorney, probably a little earlier than I should have, just based on circumstances around me, and was there for 6 years.
Wow.
And so that kind of set the stage for continued involvement in the university and academic and research setting, something that I've continued to do to this day. So, a big part of my practice today continues to be working with universities, around universities, and opposite universities on deals meant to leverage their innovation.
That is an amazing path that everything, merged together for you, that just came together, and all the things that you've learned. Yeah. And also what we're going to talk about are these opportunities. I never would have thought of that. So, that this good research or knowledge into commercialization.
If you think about, and I agree, I think it's it's kind of two ships passing in the night. On one hand, you've got an industry that's exploded, especially in regulated states where you've got various regimes encouraging, the cultivation and processing and sale of cannabis related products. Yes, I'm in Texas, but we're watching our slowly expanding compassionate use program begin to evolve. But I certainly work with numerous other states, with our numerous other offices in our large cannabis working group on multi-state operations in various ways, shapes, or form. But at the same time, yes, you've got tremendous know-how and innovation available in institutions,
Right,
whether
right.
they're universities or research institutions, and honestly, federal agencies like the USDA. And they've been putting in for decades tons of resources in the research and development of unique plant traits, techniques to make crop production better. And sure, maybe a lot of that's focused on commercial agriculture, but we've already seen, whether it's pharmaceutical and drug delivery all the way over to traditional agriculture, there's a lot of what I consider to be dual use capability that you can bring to the cannabis industry and make your product offering better, cheaper to make, more efficient, etc.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did an article a couple years ago about agricultural parts of the universities doing research in hemp. And I was even suggesting that, businesses or cultivators should partner with these research universities. For instance, maybe it's because I'm in the Northeast, but Cornell is doing a lot of work in cannabis agriculture and trying to help the farmers, better cultivate and things like that. And I know Kentucky, North Carolina University. So I kind of hit up the East Coast of the universities there. So I am sort of familiar with that. I haven't thought about it in a few years, but yes. So is all the research opportunities that you're seeing mostly plant touching research?
Not necessarily. I think what we're seeing is, it literally could be anything. So we have certain research institutes that are looking at, poorly water soluble delivery or bioavailability. So think about, advances in, edible products. And,
Yes.
you always hear the kind of some of these holy grail terms about fast acting, more efficient delivery. These are poorly water soluble extracts, naturally from the plant. And so how do you deliver that? So that's, to me, just, non-plant touching, pure drug delivery type stuff. All the way over to, indeed, there are a lot, especially with the 2018 Farm Bill Act, kind of allowing folks to dip their toe in the water with regard to, industrial hemp or compliant hemp operations. You're seeing a lot of research initiatives centered around that. So you had mentioned some schools. I recognize those names. You also have Clemson leading the charge on a hemp industry, strategic initiative that is getting some traction. A lot of that is based on kind of the industrial hemp perspective, but you're seeing some of the work that takes place. And it's also, interestingly, a lot of the land grant institutions. So this would be Mississippi State, Michigan State, Texas A&M, for example, are really diving into plant trait development. So you would envision these to transition into true, plant touching, flower touching technologies, which is great to see them, slowly get closer to that line as a research institution, so that the industry can come take it and run with it from there. And I think that there's a concept in the university world, and it's called technology transfer. And technology transfer is what it sounds like. They're transferring it to the industry perspective in order for the industry perspective to go commercialize it. And The federal government, way back in 1980, passed a law that said universities that receive federal funding, right, which most of them do, will have the ability to elect to own whatever intellectual property they develop from that federal funding. So, if any of us that in the what I call the real world go and hire someone and we pay for the work to be done, we expect to own that.
Yes.
And historically, the federal government kind of was in this gray area of, well, if they give me a grant to go perform research, does that mean the federal government owns this? And so,
Right.
what 40 plus years ago in 1980, they made that clear. They said, no, you can elect, you the recipient of our funding, to keep title. And so it's taken,
Bad move.
yeah, it took forever for it to kind of take hold, but now you can have institutions, universities, get federal funding, come up with an invention or some intellectual property and own it. Now, with that came this public policy that's a little bit in conflict with the traditional university role. Now, what is that? Well, they want to teach. They want to benefit society by performing research and teaching the world how to leverage that research. Well, that's a traditional university, what we call the ivory tower mentality, and it's perfectly fine. And their whole basis for existence is premised on that. You have the concept of published articles, competitive grant funding, things that allow a faculty member to get tenure. Okay. So these are all really standard kind of university concepts. Well, throw in that commercial success, appeal to their greed, and it's not quite the same thing, right? So I could argue that the real benefit to society is entering into the marketplace and affecting consumers today, not just publishing an article so that someone else can. And so you start to blend these concepts, commercialization versus traditional academic publication or teaching. Before, it was controversial. So once that law got passed, for 10 or 20 years, you had a lot of resistance in the academic world that we're not going to sell our souls to the private sector and do these things. But you then start to realize that someone's going to do it. And you actually may provide a disservice to society if you don't go protect that intellectual property and get it in the hands of capable commercialization efforts, which is, guess what? The private sector enterprise. A university is not built to manufacture and distribute and perform retail sales and advertise. It's not what they're there for.
Right.
So get it in the hands of someone that does know how to do that.
Oh, so somebody in the private sector would do it for the university?
Correct. And that's what this technology transfer concept has evolved to become, is the universities are now very interested in finding commercial partners to then go and commercialize the development.
Right. Interesting.
So you're seeing that all happen. Okay. Then you're seeing the cannabis industry evolve in various ways. And part of this is the 280E tax driven perspective, as we as attorneys will advise our clients on corporate structuring. How do you as a cannabis operation structure yourself in order to minimize tax liability based on unfair treatment, some might say, while also minimizing the risks and exposure associated with some of the state reporting requirements and accountability standards that vary obviously from state to state, but are significant. And so a lot of times these multi-state operators, which are great, examples, I know that's not the only example, but you'll see them from a corporate structuring standpoint utilize multiple entities. So maybe you have a real estate holding company that owns the real estate. You have a staffing company that manages the HR for the flower touching operation. And you have another maybe holding entity that holds the intellectual property, and you do a license down to that flower touching organization. So we counsel clients all the time on various structures around that. So for the first time in a long time, you're seeing an entire industry that's familiar with IP licensing. Universities also want IP licensing. So that means we, the university, have an invention. We want you to go take it to the market. And so we're going to license you that intellectual property. And for years, Pam, I've been telling universities, the reason you're not having success in your commercialization efforts is because most of the rest of the world does not like to license technology and pay a royalty for that. There's a lot of reasons why, but it's at the end of the day, I say I'm a private sector company and I'm in the market and I go license from that university some technology. So now I have to pay that university a percentage of my sales of that product. The university gets to audit me. Okay, maybe once a year, maybe I'll limit it, but at the end of the day, I have to send reports, have to send financial information to ensure I'm paying the right amount of royalty. Also, the university requires that I actively commercialize. So I can't just license it and sit it on the shelf. That's not good for society. So they'll want me to, within 2 years, have a first sale or, within a certain period of time. So that introduces the concept of perishable intellectual property rights. In other words, they can go away if I default or if I don't adhere to my requirements. The perishable nature of an IP license is bad. If I'm a company and I want to go raise money and I'm talking to investors and I'm saying, yes, I've got all these rights from this awesome institution, but if I don't commercialize in 2 years, they go away. Okay. That perishable concept sometimes makes it hard to raise money because the investor's like, no, I want to guarantee, I need to know you're going to have this and you're not going to screw it up. So you see some kind of weird concepts coming from university perspectives that need to be thought through. But to get to my original point, universities deal with licenses all the time. The cannabis industry deals with licenses all the time. Typically, that's not the case. You have a lot of industries that do not want to deal with licenses for the reasons I walked through, with the exception of probably the pharmaceutical industry. It is a little more accommodating to these license structures than, say, the high-tech industry. But I would say the cannabis industry is uniquely positioned and even better, a better fit for the university kind of commercialization, styles and structures that we're used to seeing.
So what are the opportunities that you see? I know you were starting to lay out. So in consumption methods, I guess plant cultivation, breeding, probably helping cultivators, all that kind of stuff in the field. Are there other that
all of that? Yeah, yes. I mean, it runs the gamut. So you've got, if you focus on the plants themselves, you've got institutions that are developing new genetics that are just mind blowing. And from the industrial hemp perspective, they may be genetics where there's zero THC production, like they're knocking out the THC. I mentioned polyploid species, gives you much more ability to kind of fine tune the plant traits that you're interested in. There are, so there's a ton going on there. Say we want to focus on continuing to develop, stovetop or stovepipe structures of the plant morphology. There's stuff like that going on, and it doesn't have to be genetic engineering. These are traditional breeding programs that, would be viable technologies to consider. But then it goes into things like the processing of the plants. So, and little steps within there, right? Improved methods of distillation, improved methods of extraction. There's always advances going on. If you go to MJ BizCon, it's like a kid in a candy store as far as innovation is concerned. Everyone's got their latest and greatest,
Oh yeah, I haven't.
technology. I mean, it's already there. It's doing this. And so why not tap into these universities, which receive millions and millions of dollars in funding? And if you properly structure your relationship with them, you're
Right.
not out a lot. You're not having to pay them millions and millions of dollars to get this technology. So the key is, knowing what the university wants and how to structure that relationship. Sorry for the tangent. Let's get back to the other opportunities that we have. The computing and data analytics aspect, I think, becomes very important for cultivation operations, as far as being able to track, develop, enhance, monitor, rinse, repeat, kind of the ultimate optimization of your cultivation facility. And there are vendors within the cannabis industry currently that are offering those types of services. But you can see incremental improvements at various universities, as we speak.
Right.
So then you've got other things that are going on the other side of the equation, which is kind of the big elephant in the room in the cannabis industry, which is we have a dearth of medical research perspectives or data behind this industry. And the US government has been part of the problem in making it hard to conduct research, whether it's clinical trials or clinical research or simply preclinical studies on cannabis. And we all know there's been one single source of, from the federal perspective of cannabis, that has been addressed some by giving multiple opportunities for producers to become certified as a supplier of research materials. So the researchers are now getting more access to cannabis strains that are more like what we're seeing on the market.
But it's still not where we need to be.
No, not even close, not even close. But you're seeing advances. Now, part of the problem, it's not just that the laws are restrictive, they're starting to advance, but then you've got academic institutions and their administrators. Just imagine going into a university president's office and saying, hey, I want to conduct research on cannabis. And you would have reactions. This is as recent as a year ago, where a university administration would be like, no, we can't perform that cannabis research because we will lose all federal funding.
Right.
Where'd that come? Someone didn't know what they were talking about. And as a natural reaction, just said no and like pulled that out of some, thin air in terms of a response. I heard it in a specific situation, and I've heard it since in anecdotal scenarios. It's just, that's not true. And certain agencies have made that clear, but it's still kind of this running theme that, oh, it's illegal. So if a university performs any of these illegal activities, they'll lose their federal funding. And so part of it is on the university side, they need to get comfortable, leaning in closer on the opportunities to work with the cannabis industry. And they're doing so. And the Farm Bill Act of 2018, really kind of gave some mission clarity for them. I think you'll start to see that continue in terms of working with cannabis, including, adult use, recreational opportunities, abilities to make those products better. I mentioned rapid acting. That's always an easy concept to point to because of the, onset issues you have with edible products. And so, we're seeing people alleging fast acting, or at least kind of getting it a little more rapid acting. But wouldn't it be great? Yeah, wouldn't it be great to have a true fast acting formulation? And then, what I consider to be the holy grail, wouldn't it be great to have something that turns it off? So you would be, say for a lunch hour, you would have a 5-minute onset, and then at the end of your lunch hour, you can turn it off and go back to work. Things like that are kind of coming out. You look at with the fentanyl crisis, the Narcan product that is meant to inhibit the effects of an opioid overdose. I mean, there are inhibitor platforms out there that could be exploited for this. So there's all sorts of things
Oh,
that
I know.
draw from these various industries that they're currently performing research on and say, could that have application in cannabis? The
Right.
answer
Oh,
is yes.
I mean, just thinking the medical industry alone or the medical applications.
Yeah, and that gets to the ultimate, I guess, take home note for this is that it's time. Universities are thirsty for partnering and strategic initiatives. They know this industry needs to be addressed. They can do so from the clinical perspective. You need human subjects. You need access to patient populations. Guess what? All of the health sciences centers associated with these universities have that. There's ways this can all work, in concert, and we can design that. It's just going to take some specialization in knowing, what causes them to be, to stay up at night from the standpoint of an institution of higher education with these mission statements and whatnot. So yeah, that, and my shameless plug, I mean, that's the world I work in. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. It will take some culturing of both sides to begin to understand the opportunities. But once that is kind of socialized and everyone's on the same page, these deals can be put together, and they will look a lot like the licenses, the JV styles that we see with our current multi-state operators in the cannabis industry. It would look a lot like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. No, I mean, absolutely. I don't even think it's a shameless plug, but that's why you get those knee-jerk reactions from universities saying we can't touch the plant because
Correct.
Everyone's so afraid, and no one wants to make that decision like, okay, well, what if we're going to be made an example of? No one wants to be the one who set that up. So, it's going to take legal people, to assure them, to give them comfort that we can move forward this and broker the deal. And I think, and now that we're talking, it's just what an amazing opportunity to move this industry forward. So I guess the question would, and wrapping up, two questions I think is, what would it take to, to structure an agreement with a university? And who do you think are the prime candidates that you would want to see come in and do this? Are they independent VCs? Are they companies? I guess there's probably a little bit for everyone, different situations, but how do you see the best partnership happening that could go smoothly between all the pieces?
Right. I think you're okay. We all are seeing, let's put on our cannabis hat right now. We are seeing, kind of this evolution of an industry, and whether it's the kind of M&A environment, the roll-ups, there are investment perspectives, I think, that should be thinking, they're playing chess. They're years down the road, and they're trying to predict where this is going to go. That group of perspectives should be thinking about how to align with universities. Now, we put on the university hat. They're asking the same question. How do we, with this lens going out 5-10 years, envision an industry like the cannabis industry evolving, and how can we be a part of it? And so what you see with universities are corporate strategic initiatives, industry clusters, ways they can say, we will assemble the expertise from the scientific perspective. We will let you, the industry perspective, guide us in how we focus our research, so that if we're going to go get that NIH grant next year, why don't we put in some of these projects that you're interested in, said investment perspective. So I think that your institutional investment perspectives are certainly relevant to this conversation. I think your large multi-state operations are certainly relevant to this conversation. I think your smaller operations that are looking to differentiate themselves truly, not by saying the best quality, we've all seen it, right? We have the most technical capability, we have the best quality, all of these soft terms that are used to differentiate one product from the next. Well, let's go out and really make a difference in terms of a more efficient, controlled delivery, faster delivery, processing that's done that's maybe up to medical rate standards, things where you could do a GMP in a box so it can roll into any warehouse that's not certified, but have the necessary standards that people like to see, so that they know they're buying quality and assurance. So you see all of that out there. I sit up at night and I'm like, it's just right here. We can bring all this together and get this going.
I think also the other thing is we have to get the message to our lawmakers that, we're sitting on the next industrial revolution. I mean, there's so much innovation, bring manufacturing back to the United States. We're building that special equipment that is particular to the cannabis industry. We're developing this equipment to build the cannabis industry. It's an industrial revolution. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I totally get what I'm absolutely see the whole thing.
It's
I
there.
guess, it's there. So I guess then what is what any other problems that we could talk about? I guess, how are the VCs handling it? There's a lot of people standing back in the industry because they don't want to invest. And that's one of our problems until the laws move forward.
Right.
What kind of interest are you seeing, or what do you think needs to happen to break this log jam? And how are the VCs reacting to this, or are they even aware of this?
I think, they are. And I think there's kind of this world of haves and have-nots, within the cannabis industry, where the haves are dealing with relationships that are giving them guidance in the ultimate evolution of this industry. And so they're beginning to position, while everyone else is, going about their day, to, get ready for the next big thing. You've seen publications and I guess announcements on certain cannabinoid production platforms like yeast cells, and things like that. My opinion is that we could go into plant cell fermentation by itself.
Synthetic manufacturing.
Yeah. And guess what? You have some of the world's most successful cancer drugs doing exactly that right now. All you need to do is just go look. But I think you're getting to what I'm seeing is there are groups that are thinking about this stuff. There are groups that are working with universities.
Okay.
I think you're starting to see some of these initiatives being discussed. I've participated in several in the last couple of years, and they range from, kind of more of a local perspective for a community that has a university present, to the more global impact strategic initiatives that are interested in bringing in industry cluster perspectives, all the way to more social innovation driven, to really assist with economic development around a certain community that wants to leverage the institution. Don't forget, you have your federal agencies themselves, which are great resources for collaboration, that need to be leveraged as well.
Really? Federal agencies in the for cannabis?
Yeah, NIH has its own program that's getting kicked off for cannabis research. And believe me, they all understand and recognize that the fact we don't have enough clinical data available is a major hindrance to the advance of this industry.
Yeah.
So, there are opportunities beginning to develop where these agencies will participate and or fund the work in cannabis. From the university standpoint, the de-risking of working in the cannabis industry is continuing. And so I've spoken at kind of the trade organizations that oversee these technology transfer concepts for their institutions, and I've told them, you're not going to lose your funding. Don't let these kind of urban myths kind of come in and throw you off. If you've got initiatives, let's develop them. And if you want to talk to folks in the industry, let me know. We we can start to matchmake and find out who's interested in doing what. So it's out there, it's starting to happen. It may not be widely publicized. And that's the other thing. Universities are inherently skeptical. They're always worried about being taken advantage of. Once this whole concept of technology transfer came on, there's a lot of speculators coming in, wanting to see if they can get an early look or a free look at technologies. And, if the term speculator resonates with you, I mean, the cannabis industry is likewise full of speculators. And so, we've got to make sure and, focus on the quality aspects of any of these opportunities. Universities aren't going to want to work with startups and just throw everything in there and let that startup say, hey, yes, we're involved with such and such university. They've blessed this product, right?
Right,
So
right.
there's risks associated with how you work, with each other. And that's part of my job, our job as attorneys, is to structure those in a manner that lets everyone kind of slowly advance into the relationship, get satisfied with what milestones they want to be satisfied with, at which point this thing begins to take shape.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I think that's a great way to end it. You are a great resource for trying to put this together, and you are in it and you see it, and I think it's so exciting. Actually, I really love it. It's really great. So I think we've covered everything, right? Is there anything else that you think you want to add to this?
I feel like that's the great introduction into the concept. And I think as folks begin to, hear this and think about their own contacts and relationships, this will likely resonate, and it will, hopefully get them thinking about opportunities that they can go pursue. And it's something I've thought about for years as I've continued to watch the two different areas that I practice in often.
Right.
But I think now, especially with some of the relaxation of federal perspectives with regard to R&D, you're going to start to see this come together. And I'd love to be here when it does.